Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India expresses deep concern to the UK over External Affairs Minister Jaishankar's security breach in London, seeks strict action against the culprits. US rejects 26/11 Mumbai terror attack accused Rana's extradition stay plea. India working closely with the US government to complete the necessary formalities. Kremlin says Russia may need to act on EU militarization plans. Adds confrontational EU rhetoric not in sync with search for peaceful settlement to the Ukrainian conflict. And US President Donald Trump questions the US-Japan Security Treaty, calls the long-standing bilateral security pact non-reciprocal. US President Donald Trump on Thursday criticized the US-Japan Security Treaty, calling it unfair as the US is obligated to defend Japan but not vice versa. He also pointed out Japan's economic gains from trade with the US, questioning the terms of the deal. Trump's remarks have raised concerns that he may push for a new security or trade agreement with Tokyo as Japan's trade surplus remains a point of contention. With his remarks on Japan, Trump also cast doubt on the US commitment to NATO, stating that Washington would not defend its allies if they fail to pay enough for their own defense. He reiterated that NATO countries must contribute more to their security or the US would not come to their aid.
If they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. No, I'm not going to defend them. I got into a lot of heat when I said that. You said, oh, he's violating NATO. And, you know, the biggest problem I have with NATO, I really, I know the guys very well. They're friends of mine. But if the United States was in trouble and we called them, we said, we got a problem, France, we got a problem, a couple of others I won't mention. Do you think they're going to come and protect us? They're supposed to. I'm not so sure.
The Kremlin said on Friday that Russia may need to act to respond to what it called European Union plans to militarize the bloc that cast Russia as its main adversary. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters that Moscow says that the European Union is now actively discussing the militarization of the EU and the development of the defense segment. He added that this is a process that they are watching closely because the EU is positioning Russia as its main adversary. Peskov further stressed that the confrontational rhetoric and confrontational thinking that they are now seeing in Brussels and in European capitals is seriously at odds with the mood for finding a peaceful settlement around Ukraine. European leaders on Thursday backed plans to spend more on defense and continue to stand by Ukraine in a world upended by Donald Trump's reversal of US policies. While Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has said that the EU cannot afford to finance Ukraine's military efforts as the US financial aid is no longer guaranteed, the leaders of the 26 EU countries signed a statement voicing support for Ukraine without Hungary. Orban has refused to send weapons to Ukraine since the start of the war and kept close relations with Moscow. He said the way the EU wants to support Ukraine now, while also boosting Europe's own defense spending, would ruin Europe.
If a war has been going on for 3 years and 26 European states and the US jointly supported Ukraine and still the Russians are winning on the front line and now the US quits financing the war, why would the other 26 member states have a chance to take this war to the end? It is a nice thing to help and the Ukrainians need help, but we cannot help them if we get ruined in the meantime.
Ezt a folyamatot időben meg kell állítani.
So the EU leaders have signed off on a move to loosen the bloc's budget rules to allow member countries to increase their defense spending late on Thursday. And joining us with more on this is DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbelu. Chiponda, how much of an impact will these plans have?
It is, of course, hard to predict just how much money the looser borrowing rules will free up. What is clear is that it could help jumpstart the EU economy, which has been stagnating in recent years. And we have already seen that this week, at least here in Germany, there's plans to take on more government debt. And that is not just about defense spending. The politician most likely to become Germany's next chancellor, Friedrich Merz, proposed a spending plan for 900 billion euros this week. And just over half of that is actually for infrastructure. Now, that move has, of course, been cheered by markets and most economists who have been calling on Berlin to take on more debt, especially amid the country's most recent economic downturn. Now, the hundreds of billions of euros in defense spending that are planned, of course, could affect inflation, economic growth, and debt levels, especially elsewhere in Europe, where sovereign debt levels are much higher than here in Germany. So it will, of course, be interesting to see how EU countries navigate spending around defense with higher government debt levels.
Chiponda, also tell us what more can we expect from the EU?
We got a bit of a sense of that from the European Central Bank. Now, on Thursday, it lowered the benchmark interest rate to 2.5%, and that was the sixth cut since June last year. And the ECB made that move to help stimulate the EU economy, which is, of course, stuttering because of lower exports, weak investments, and uncertainty around global trade. Now, the European Central Bank expects the EU's GDP to grow just 0.9% this year. And whether the billions in defense spending will be enough to spur the European economy will also depend on other factors like global trade and any potential tariffs from the US. The ECB's latest focus doesn't factor in the amounts of spending that have been announced this week. So we may, of course, need to watch what policymakers say over the coming weeks to get a better sense of where they believe the EU economy is headed.
Thank you, Chiponda, for all these updates. Chiponda Chimbelu joining us from DW Berlin. Meanwhile, US-Ukraine talks will be held in Saudi Arabia next week. US President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff said that he's in discussions with Ukraine for a peace agreement framework to end hostilities with Russia and that a meeting is planned next week with the Ukrainians in Saudi Arabia.
President Zelensky sent a letter to the president. I think the president thought that it was a really good, positive first step. And from that, we're now in discussions to coordinate a meeting with the Ukrainians in Riyadh or even potentially Jeddah. So the city is moving around a little bit, but it will be Saudi Arabia. And I think the idea is to get down a framework for a peace agreement and an initial ceasefire as well.
Trump and Zelensky had acrimonious talks at the White House on February 28th, but since then the two sides have resumed work on a revenue-sharing minerals deal. At his speech to a joint session of Congress on Tuesday, Trump said that he had received a letter from Zelensky in which the Ukrainian leader said that he was ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible. US President Donald Trump on Thursday signed orders to postpone fresh tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports. Trump has announced a one-month reprieve from 25% tariffs for goods covered under the US-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. The goods that are exempted include car makers. It is the second time in 2 days that Trump has rolled back his taxes on imports from America's two biggest trade partners. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum thanked Trump for the move, saying that her government security measures have been working in the reduction of opioid fentanyl traffic into the US.
Bueno, está traducida. Al ponerlo en inglés y luego.
This agreement is valid until April 2nd. Remember that he announced that on April 2nd he is going to announce tariffs to all the countries in the world. So he places Mexico within that international agreement, or the decision he is going to make more than agreement, because it is their decision, but he puts us within. just like any other country in the world, not with what he was doing now that finally excluded us.
Prácticamente.
The White House has also continued to promote its plans for other tariffs, promising action on 2nd April, when officials have said that they will unveil recommendations for tailored reciprocal trade duties on countries around the world. Moving on, US President Donald Trump confirmed that his administration held talks with Hamas to secure the release of Israeli hostages. Meanwhile, doubts remain about the response from Hamas. Will the negotiations lead to a breakthrough? DD India's Sarita Chaudhary reports.
US President Donald Trump on Thursday confirmed that his administration has been in discussions with Hamas regarding the release of the remaining Israeli hostages.
We are having discussions with Hamas. We are helping Israel in those discussions because we're talking about Israeli hostages. And we're not doing anything in terms of Hamas. We're not giving cash. We're not giving $6 billion like you hear other administrations give. And in fact, I got 59 hostages out, and we gave nothing. In 59, we gave nothing.
Meanwhile, Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, reiterated the US stance, saying Washington's priority is to secure the release of the hostages. Addressing reporters at the White House, Witkoff said that the US does not believe Hamas has been forthright in negotiations and urged the group to engage transparently.
We feel that Hamas has not been forthright with us, and it's time for them to be forthright with us. And Eden Alexander would be a very important show. And so we'll see how they're going to react. The president has issued a statement about what's acceptable to him and what's not. And hopefully we'll see some good conduct next week, and I'll be able to go in there and have discussions.
At the same time, the US State Department commented on Egypt's proposed reconstruction plan for Gaza. The plan, which is estimated to cost $53 billion, aims to rebuild Gaza without displacing Palestinians from the enclave. This plan is seen as a contrast to President Donald Trump's proposal for US control and resettlement of Gaza's residents.
And this is what the world wants, not only in this conflict, but other conflicts. And no one wins. No one is winning here in this framework. And so, regarding the Arab solution, the Arab deal via Egypt, that what I have for you right now is that it does not meet the expectations.
As the US confirmed its talks with Hamas about the release of Israeli hostages and urging Hamas to be more transparent, meanwhile doubts remain over whether Hamas will cooperate or if the talks will reach a deadlock. Sarita Chaudhary's report for DD India.
A South Korean court cancelled on Friday impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol's arrest warrant, paving the way for his release from jail after he was arrested in mid-January on insurrection charges over his brief imposition of martial law. The Seoul Central District Court said in a statement that its ruling was based on the timing of the indictment that came after the initial detention period had expired and noted questions about the legality of the investigation process that involved two separate agencies. On January 15th, Yoon became the first sitting president to be arrested on criminal charges after days of a standoff between presidential guards and arresting authorities. Yoon's lawyers have said that he may not be immediately released because prosecutors can appeal. The prosecutor's office did not immediately comment on the ruling. Greece's parliament will vote today on a no-confidence motion against Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis' government over its handling of the 2023 train crash that killed 57 people. Students and protesters gathered outside Greece's parliament on Friday as lawmakers prepared to vote on no-confidence motion. Despite growing public outrage, Mitsotakis' ruling party holds a majority and expected to survive the vote. The disaster occurred on February 28, 2023, when a passenger train collided with a freight train due to a faulty equipment and human error. Allegations of a government cover-up have fueled protests, with opposition leader Nikos Androulakis calling the government's response criminal incompetence. In Bangladesh, banned terror group Hizbut Tahrir took out a large procession under the March for Khilafat banner in Dhaka on Friday. Joined by thousands of its members, the group began the rally from the north gate of Baitul Mukarram National Mosque after the Friday prayers. The rally was titled March for Khilafat. Later on, police charged batons and fired tear gas shells and sound grenades to disperse members of the banned organization. Following police action, the demonstrators split into smaller groups and took shelter in nearby alleys. You're watching DD India Live, still to come on the show. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar meets Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Ireland, Simon Harris, and talk of new action plan to reinvigorate ties.
The dye the way our ancestors did by using natural products with some modifications.
Always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life. Warm up to grandeur that's beyond compare. And history that's dotted with tales of bravery. Smiling soul of India, where music, art, cuisine and culture comes together to create an unforgettable impression. Punjab is all set to win your hearts with its unique and colorful extravaganza.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Tanvi Taneja. 26/11 Mumbai terror attack accused Tahavvur Rana has received a major setback from the US Supreme Court. His petition to stop his extradition to India has been rejected. But within hours, he submitted a renewed application seeking a stay of his extradition to India. 2008 Mumbai blasts were a series of coordinated terrorist attacks that took place in November 2008. 10 members of Lashkar-e-Taiba, a Pakistan-based terrorist organization, carried out shooting and bombing attacks lasting 4 days. 175 people died and 300 people were injured. Tahavvur Rana is a known associate of Pakistani-American terrorist David Coleman Headley, one of the main conspirators of the November 26th attacks in Mumbai in 2008. Tahavvur Rana had filed a petition in the US Supreme Court asking for an emergency stay on his extradition, but it was denied on Friday. In his application, Rana argued that he would not survive long enough to be tried in India due to various reasons. In addition to these concerns, Rana highlighted his deteriorating health. Earlier in February, US President Donald Trump announced the extradition of Tahavvur Rana to India and said that he would face justice. He made the announcement during a joint press conference with Prime Minister Narendra Modi following their bilateral meeting. On extradition of Tahavvur Rana, India's Ministry of External Affairs said that the government is working closely with the US government to complete all necessary formalities to allow for his extradition to India.
You would have seen President Trump's comments regarding the extradition of Tahavvur Rana. The joint statement which was adopted during the visit of the Prime Minister also reflects this sentiment. We are working closely with the US government to complete the necessary formalities to allow for his extradition to India.
The 12th Global Terrorism Index was released earlier this week. The new findings suggest that the number of countries recording a terrorist attack increased from 58 to 66. This reverses nearly a decade of improvements, with 45 countries deteriorating. Pakistan ranks second on the Global Terrorism Index 2025, released by the Institute for Economics and Peace earlier this week. In 2024, the number of deaths due to terrorist attacks in Pakistan surged by 45%, with over 1,000 incidents, more than double the previous year's count of 517. This is the first time since the first edition of the index in 2000 that Pakistan has exceeded 1,000 terrorist attacks in a single year. Sahel region accounts for half of the global terror deaths, while ISIS has expanded to 22 countries, the deadliest with 1,805 deaths. Burkina Faso ranks first among 163 countries based on the impact of terrorism. The GTI evaluates terrorism through various indicators such as the number of attacks, fatalities, injuries, and the overall impact on the country. The Afghan affiliate Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan (TTP) has become the fastest growing terror group in the country, according to the report. TTP's attacks spiked in 2024, accounting for over half of Pakistan's terrorism-related deaths, with 482 attacks resulting in 585 fatalities. The group caused a 91% increase in the number of deaths compared to previous year. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is in Ireland on an official visit. Dr. Jaishankar had a warm and open meeting with Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Ireland, Simon Harris, this morning in Dublin. Both the leaders discussed bilateral cooperation, including a new action plan to reinvigorate ties. They agreed to set up a joint economic commission to increase trade, investment and technology linkages. They exchanged views on the recent developments in their respective regions and globally, including the Ukraine conflict, West Asia crisis, Afghanistan and the Indo-Pacific. They also spoke about India-EU cooperation and multilateralism. Further, India's External Affairs Minister, in a social media post on X, shared photos of his interaction with the Indian community in Ireland. Dr. S. Jaishankar posted on X, and I quote him here, "Great to meet our vibrant Indian community this time in Dublin. Shared with them the high appreciation the Irish leadership had for their contribution. Also spoke about the transformation underway in India, our greater responsibilities abroad and the can-do spirit of Indian youth." Interacting with the Indian community in Dublin, Ireland, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said that when talking about India and Indians, people don't need a map. They remember from their past interactions and experience what India and Indians are.
I always tell others that when we speak of the image of India, others they don't look at a map to have an image of India. They remember a person. They remember somebody they know, some experience with them, a face, a relationship, a feeling. And while I have experienced this across the world, I must tell you, I felt it very, very strongly.
Dr. S. Jaishankar added that during his meetings with dignitaries in Ireland, he felt proud when they initiated talks about the Indian community.
In all the meetings, for me it was a great, I would say, sense of pride. They brought up the Indian community. They mentioned the contribution of the Indian community. Exactly what the ambassador said, that the professionals out here, the people who have contributed to the not just development but especially the health sector in this country. So I want to really sincerely give a very big thank you on behalf of the nation, because you make my job and my life easier.
On the occasion of Jan Aushadhi Divas today, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the first phase of the Namo Hospital in Silvassa with an aim to boost healthcare facilities in all corners of the country. built at the cost of over 460 crore rupees. This 450-bedded hospital will significantly strengthen healthcare services in the Union Territory. It will provide state-of-the-art medical care to the people in the region, especially the tribal communities. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated and laid the foundation stone of multiple development projects for the Union Territory worth over 2,580 crore rupees at Silvassa. These include several infrastructure projects to improve connectivity, encourage tourism and create employment opportunities in the region.
हम इस प्रदेश को एक ऐसा मॉडल स्टेट बना रहे हैं जो अपने समग्र विकास, होलिस्टिक डेवलपमेंट के लिए जाना जाए। मैं चाहता हूं ये क्षेत्र जाना जाए अपने हाई टेक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए। ये क्षेत्र जाना जाए आधुनिक स्वास्थ्य सेवाओं के लिए। यह क्षेत्र को जाना जाए वर्ल्ड क्लास एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूट्स के लिए।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also distributed appointment letters under the Rozgar Mela and the benefits to the beneficiaries under PM Awas Yojana Urban, Gir Adarsh Ajivika Yojana and Silvan Didi scheme. And on to some sports news now. New Zealand pacer Matt Henry is doubtful for the Champions Trophy final against India due to a shoulder injury. Henry is racing to be fit for the title clash in Dubai on Sunday. He injured himself when he landed on his shoulder while fielding during the semi-final against South Africa in Lahore on Wednesday. The 33-year-old is tournament's leading wicket-taker with 10 scouts. Coach Gary Stead was hopeful that the pace bowler will recover in time for the final. And that's all for this edition of DD India Live. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And you can also download our DD India mobile app for quick news and updates on the go. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.